Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. How are you guys? Well, are we ready to start this webinar? Let me present myself first. I'm Xavier Lopez, a business analyst. And well, I would also like to know where are you guys from? Where are you coming? I know that I have some clients that are attending this webinar from Colombia. Maybe we have others from Mexico. Just please leave it in the chat so we can know where you're coming guys from. So, first question that I would like to address, why are we here today? We're here today to talk about Studio. Odoo Studio is one of the most powerful tools that we have in Odoo, and it allows us to make many customizations. It's a very user-friendly tool to use, very flexible, and that will give us more flexibility in Odoo. It will allow us to add different fields without the need to be a programmer, without the need to be a developer. So let's get started. First, let me introduce myself and what's my role in Odoo. I'm Xavier Lopez. I'm a business analyst here at Odoo, and my role is learning about your businesses and structure. I gather and analyze requirements. I discuss the best practices that we're gonna need to configure your database and also to help you implement it and teach you how to do it. If you have any further questions regarding this webinar, please send an email to afi@odoo.com. So for the agenda today, first we're gonna talk about Odoo Studio. What's Odoo Studio? I know that we mentioned some topics, but then what are we gonna mention? There are some basic terms that I would like us to understand, which are gonna be regarding Odoo's architecture. It's gonna be regarding models and views, and also fields and Odoo. Once we're covered with that part, we're gonna be able to start our demo. Okay, so let's proceed. Why Odoo Studio? It allows us to do customizations very easily, in a very easy way. Some examples that I had, it's with some clients. Some clients, they need to show or add the commissions in the sales order for the salesperson. Some clients that I had, they needed to add a second salesperson to a sales order. Another client, we had a client that had multiple warehouses and they needed to display the information of the available hours of operation for those warehouses in the sales order because their ending clients were picking up the products in their warehouses and they wanted to show that in the report of the sales order. Those are some examples that I wanted to mention. So what can you do with Studio? We can create awesome apps. It's a very easy thing to do. We can build or personalize our reports. We can customize advanced views. We could also automate some workflows, add some automated actions, and overall, we're gonna be able to increase our productivity with our Odoo database. Also wanted to mention that if we create an app within Odoo with Odoo Studio, we're going to be able to show it or to see it in our mobile phone app. So now that we went over some of the topics, let's explain some basic terms to understand the importance of Odoo Studio and how we relate it in the system. So let's start with the models and views. It's part of the Odoo's architecture. Models. Models, they define what data the app or the module should contain. We'll see more about that in a second. Views, they define how the app's data should be displayed. We'll also discuss a bit more. And then finally, controllers, it routes commands to the model and views. We're not gonna get into that. Now, Odoo, everything is integrated in Odoo. How? Using different relational databases or a database that is related between tables. So each model or each table, it will have different records, and within those records, we'll have different fields. So let's think about the sale order model. In the sale order model, object or table, we'll have all the different records, all the different sales orders that we perform, the quotations that we want to make or that we still need to send. And within each record, we'll have different fields. For example, the name of the sales order, the customer, the order date, the salesperson, and so on. Now, what do we have in the model? The model has the list of fields, access rights, record rules, and the views that the model renders. Where can we retrieve the information for those models? If we are in debug mode in our Odoo instance, we can go to General Settings, go to Technical menu, open Models, and from there select one model. On this image, we're displaying the model sales order. And as you can see, we have fields here, different fields. When we open a sales order in Odoo, in the demo, maybe we see the customer, maybe we see the payment terms, we see different fields. But there are other fields that are existing within the model that we are not seeing. Why are we mentioning this? So now in the demo, we'll see a bit more about that. Views. As we were mentioning, it's how the records are going to be displayed. Can be form view, list view, Kanban view, several views. Where can we see the icons for different types of views? If we go to our search bar, on the bottom right of the search bar, we'll have several icons. Those icons will be the different type of views that we can see in our instance. Some of the views that we want to mention: form views. Form views are used to create, edit complex records. List views are usually used to provide overviews or look for specific records. Kanban views are usually used to manage flows. For example, if we remember in CRM or in projects, in CRM we have to manage different opportunities and we can drag and drop them to different stages. So that would be to manage flows. And then of course we'll have other views that we're not going to be using in this Studio Basics webinar, but it could be pivot, grids, and Gantt views as well. One tip: if you want to know which view and which model are you on, when we are in our Odoo database, we go to the URL, we'll be able to see which is the model we are on and which is the view. If you see here, we attached two images, one for the sales order model, and you can see that we have the sales order model, and the one for products. When we open products, if we see our URL, we can see that we are in the model named product template and in the Kanban view. Alrighty, now that we talked about models and views, just to recap a bit, models, they will have a bunch of fields, and then each model can have different views, different ways to display the data that we have within those models. Let's talk about those fields in Odoo. We have two main types of fields in Odoo. Basic fields or scalar fields, they represent simple values like numbers or text. And then we have relational fields that they represent relations between models. Let's do an example for this so that it's more understandable. There is a model which is the countries model. That model has different fields. Fields such as the name of the country, the shortcode for the country, and other fields. What do we have in our contacts model? In our contacts model, we have the name of the contact, we have the street of the contact, we have the city, zip code, and so on. What else do we have? We have also the country of the contact. Why are we mentioning this? Because the country is related to the model countries. So when we see that contact, we'll be able to retrieve information from the list of countries or from the model countries that we have. Let's talk a bit more about those relational fields. There will be four types of relational fields: many-to-one fields, one-to-many, many-to-many, and related fields. The many-to-one fields, let's think about this way. We can have many records and we want to retrieve just one of them. For example, in a sales order, we want to put the sales order for one single customer. So we have our drop-down list of all our many customers and we'll select just one of them. So our relationship that is a many-to-one. What about the one-to-many? The relationship with one-to-many, if we open the contact itself, we can see for that specific contact how many sales orders we created for that specific contact. So one contact, many sales orders. Pretty straightforward, right? Then let's talk about the many-to-many. Many-to-many would be both mixed. So from many records, we want to select many possible instances. When we are opening the demo in a bit, we'll be able to see a bit more about that information. It's going to be better understood. So our models, they are connected through many-to-one relations, which allow us to bring information from those related fields. Then in a sales order, we have the customer, right? What if we want to retrieve information such as the email for the customer? Can we do that? Yes. How? With related fields. As we said before, there is the many-to-one, one-to-many, many-to-many, and related fields. So with related fields, we're going to be able to retrieve information from another model. And finally, just to mention, here is an example of those one-to-many relations. And you can see for the contact Azure interior, we have the buttons or the from one contact, the many opportunities, many meetings, many sales, purchase orders that we did for that specific contact. So let's recap a bit. For this basic architecture that we have in Odoo, we will have models, which have fields. Those fields, they can be basic fields or relational fields. And then all that combined, we can display those with different views. Let's jump now to our demo, which I'm sure it's the part you are more interested in, but this needed to be understood. So let's close our presentation for a second and let's go to our demo. Hope you guys can see it well. I'll zoom in a bit. So let's open our sales app. When we open our sales app, as we were mentioning, what can we see in the URL? We can see the model we are on, and we can see also the view type. We're in a list view. If we open, for example, a certain sales order, for example, number 7, we're going to be able to see that we are still in the sales order model, but we are in the form view. Okay, same thing, just to show, if you go to our contacts app, you'll see that the model is called rest.partner. So that's going to be the technical name of the model. All right, now that that's understood, let's jump into Studio. How do we jump into Studio? We could jump from the list view, we could jump from the form view. In this case, we'll start from the form view. We open any of our sales orders, and we have this icon here. This icon is the one that is going to allow us to toggle Studio or to activate or open Studio. Let's hit it. What do we see when we open Studio? We see on the left side new fields that we can add, and we can also add existing fields. What did we say? We said that each model has many fields, and there might be some fields that we don't need to display in our form view or in our list view. However, once I had one client that they needed to understand or to know when was that sales order created. And there was a very easy way to show that. Why did he needed that? It was because if the sales order was created after 5 p.m. on Fridays, that sales order would have to account for the next week, not for the present week. So how can we retrieve that existing field? It's a creation date. It's a creation date field. It's an existing field within the model that we can drag and drop. That's how we add those different customizations to our form view. So let's drag it here below payment terms. We have that creation date, and you will see how it displays directly the date and the time for that view. All right, now that was pretty straightforward, but let's talk a bit more about other fields and what else can we see in our Studio screen. First of all, here on the top right corner, we will be able to see the different views. We are now in the form view, but we could go to the list view. We could also go to the Kanban view, calendar, different views where we can do several customizations. How else can we get into those different views? If you see here, we have the different menus. We have the views, reports, automations, access controls, filter rules. Today, we'll only be talking about views, reports, and how to do customizations in those. So let's click views. If we click on views, you see that here we can also select which view we want to modify. So let's go to the form view, which is where we were. And in this case, let's start adding some of those basic fields. As you see, we have text fields, we have numbers, we have date and time, checkboxes, selections. We'll be adding 2 or 3 of those. Also in the basic types, we have the files. We could also add priority or even images. Now, why do we have those small indicators here? That's the technical name for each of those fields. Why do we have it displayed? Because we are in debug mode. If we were not in debug mode, we would not be able to see those technical names. Just as a friendly reminder, how do we activate debug mode? For that, we have to go to General Settings. And on the bottom of General Settings, if we didn't have it activated, we could just hit Activate Developer Mode. Once you activate it, you have these additional options. Just no need to activate them. Alrighty, let's open that sales order again and start doing some of the customizations that we want to add. So where do we find the salesperson for our sales order? If we go to the other info, we have here the salesperson. So one of the examples that we mentioned at the beginning is, or that we're mentioning now, not sure if I mentioned it at the beginning, is what if I want to add the commission for this salesperson? I had one client that the commission, how was it managed, the commission for each sales order? The salesperson would get 5% of the total of the sales order. How can we do that? With Odoo Studio, it's going to be very, very easy. Let's open Studio. And let's drag below the salesperson a field. It's going to be a decimal field. We drag and drop just below the salesperson that new field. Perfect. Once we dropped it, we can hit that new field and let's see what we have. We have different properties. We'll talk about them later with a couple of examples. We have the label of this new field. So we're going to call it commission. Once we click anywhere or hit enter, the label is going to be updated. So let's click just right here. It takes just a couple, 3 seconds. Perfect. Still loading. Alrighty, now we have that field called commission. And we have the help tooltip. What's the help tooltip? The help tooltip is going to be useful for us to set up a description for that new field. You may have seen that in other fields, existing fields that are in Odoo, if you hover over that label, you'll be able to find a small description of that field. Why is it for? What's the field for? So let's add that this commission is commission to be calculated for salesperson, right? Perfect. What else do we have? We have also the technical name, which we are only going to be seeing if we are in debug mode. Otherwise, we will not be seeing it. What else could we do? In this case, our client didn't want to show that commission to everybody, right? So we would limit the visibility of this field only to one group. Which group? The sales administrator group. So just to show you how we do that, we would add here the sales administrator group. For the purposes of this demo, we're just not gonna click it. Alrighty, and we are gonna continue. So to show you how that commission is displayed. If we go to the other info tab, we see here our commission. how did the client operate that 5%? We would select the total, copy it, go to the other info tab, edit it, and now we go to commission. And since it's a decimal field, what can we do? We say it's going to be equal to the total of the sales order, and we multiply it by the 5%. Once we click anywhere, that's automatically calculated, and we know the commission for this sales order. Very easy, very straightforward. Let's save. Now, what if the sales administrator, they want to see it not only per each of the sales orders forms, we actually want to see it in our list view. Can we do that? The answer is yes. We added that commission field, that sales commission field, in the form view, but we added it in the model sales order. So what's going to happen now? If we open Studio in our list view, it's going to be an existing field. We can find it with the name that we gave to that field, commission. Oops, I mistyped it. Commission, or what we can do as well, when we are in debug mode, all the fields that are customized fields, the ones that we add with the Studio, they will start with x_studio, and here we can see that additional field. Let's just add it after customer, or actually after salesperson better. There we go. And we have the commission for that specific sales order. Let's just add a couple more commissions, one in the sales order 24. Let's say that this is 200. And let's go to a sales order that has been performed by Mark Demo, so a different salesperson. And we'll select the commission to be 600. So what happens with our customized fields? Now we'll be able also to find them or to filter by those specific fields. First, let's group by salesperson. And when we group by salesperson, you see that we get here the sum of our different commissions. We can also filter by date. That's not Studio related. But here we can see that additional field that was a customized field. If we open it, we'll be able to see those fields. We could also filter by that customized commission field. So let's say that we want to see the sales orders that are with a commission that are greater than 800, and apply. You see that we can just filter by that commission or by the fields that we are adding in our customization. Let's jump into an additional customization. Let's do everything in just the sales order number 7. It's going to be easier. Another client. What did I have with another client? They wanted to separate if the sales order was going to be a national sales order or an international sales order. And they wanted that to be a required field. It was mandatory to input that field. Otherwise, we could not proceed with the sales order. How can we do that? Let's open Studio. And still in the form view, as we did before, the commission is added to all our form views because it's a field that we are adding in the form view. Now let's add a selection field. We'll just put it below creation date. You can see that we can put it anywhere. We could even move some of the fields that are already here existing. But for this new field, let's specify the possible values. It can be a national sales order or an international sales order. Let's confirm. We have to add again what's the name for this new field. So it's going to be national versus international. And what can we do? As we were mentioning, with those fields, we can modify their properties. And for this specific one, we're going to say that it's a required field. Perfect. Let's close Studio. When we edit the sales order, we'll see that it's a mandatory field. If we try to save or create a new sales order and we don't specify the characteristics for national versus international, what's going to happen? Since it's a required field, we're going to have an invalid field. Why? Because we still have to complete it. So let's select that it's going to be a national one, this sales order, save, and you see how we have added this field here. As we did with the commission, we could add this national versus international field also in our list view. Alrighty, those two examples were for the basic fields. Now let's go into those related fields. Let's open Studio, and I'll give you the example. We'll select it also in the other info tab. And what's the example here? We had a client that they needed to add a second salesperson or an assistant to the salesperson. Out of the box, we cannot do that if we don't have Studio. So what's the very easy way to do it? We can add an extra contact. We know that in our contacts, we could specify the second salesperson. So what are we gonna have to do? From many possible contacts, we want to select one, right? So let's select the many to one field. Let's have it just below the salesperson in this case. Where or with what do we have to relate this field? It's gonna be with the contacts model. So we have here contact. Let's confirm. And this new field, what do we have to do with this new field? Add the name of our new field. So we have here, it will be as contact. I just name it assistant of salesperson. Perfect. What happens with our many to one fields? We have additional options, not only the properties, but down here we can either disable the creation or disable the opening. Let's talk about it in a second. When we close Studio, we have that new field, assistant of salesperson. So that's second salesperson. Here we could select anyone in the list, but we could also be creating a new contact. In this case, let's create Xavier Lopez. You see, we can create this contact. I'm not gonna do it. Just hit cancel. I don't want to create that one. What if I don't want my people to be able to create new contacts from here? Let's just select Studio, and with that many to one field, we can disable the creation, and just with that, we're not going to be able to create new contacts with this field. Okay, so that was easy as well, I hope, for you guys. Of course, if you have any questions, remember that you have the email that we provided at the beginning, afi@odoo.com, for additional questions. And of course, we'll try to have some time at the end of the webinar to answer some of your questions today. Okay, let's continue. Another example. There was another client that instead of having just one assistant, they could have at points or at times several assistants. Let's do two examples for this. Let's use some of the conditional properties, and let's add the possibility to select either if we want to have multiple assistants or not. How? We'll do this with a checkbox. Checkboxes are really useful. They are Boolean fields, and they allow us to say if something is true or false, if it's a 1 or a 0. So let's add that checkbox just below of assistant of salesperson. Alrighty, and we're gonna name it multiple assistants. There we go. So if we select the checkbox, what do we want to do? Select the multiple assistants for this particular sales order. Now for those multiple assistants, what would we have to do? There can exist from many records, from many contacts, we want to select many possible contacts. So what's gonna be that relation? It's gonna be a many-to-many. So when you see the technical names, both the many-to-many and the tags are many-to-many fields. I'll use for this occasion the tags. Let's put it just below multiple assistant. How are we gonna relate it? Or to what? To the contacts model again. Let's confirm. And let's rename that new field. Instead of contact, we'll rename it as assistants. Alrighty. Once this has been added, what were we mentioning? We just want this field to be shown or to be displayed if the multiple assistants has been selected. So how can we make this field invisible until that is selected? With a condition for the invisible. If we hit directly the invisible, what's going to happen? That this field is going to be totally invisible. We're not going to be able to see it. See, we don't have the assistants. You may be like, oh, and what happened with this field? Can I see it again? Yes, of course. If we hit here, view, there's a checkbox that we can show our invisible elements. You will see not only the assistants, but there will be other fields that were invisible before. They can be related also to some configurations that we have not activated. For example, multi-currency. This is an invisible field because we don't have multi-currency activated in the database. So let's hit that assistants field that we added. And in this case, instead of having just plainly as invisible, let's add the condition. And our condition is going to be that my field multiple assistants, as long as it's set to false, meaning it's not set, we're not going to be displaying that field assistants. Save. Perfect. And now let's close Studio so we can see in the form view that additional field that we added. If you see, here we have the multiple assistants, but we cannot see the assistants. Once we click the checkbox, since we added that condition, we can finally add the different assistants for this sales order. And we can add Brandon Freeman, let's add also Colin Diaz and Nicole Ford, so multiple assistants. For the many-to-one field, let's just add the one of Brandon Freeman. Why? Because from there I want to explain you also the related fields. This many-to-one, if we click on the new value that we have for that field, you'll be able to see all the information for Brandon Freeman, including the email. But what if I want to see the email of my contact directly here? Can I do that? Yes. How? Let's open Studio. And here we'll talk about one of the last relational fields that we have. Let's add a new field. And you see here that we have that related field. Let's hit it and put it just below the assistant of salesperson. With what do we want to relate it? In this case, it's not with a model, it's with an existing field already. So the existing field is going to be with the assistant of salesperson, which is related to our contacts model. So let's select that field, assistant, actually we had it there, okay. Assistant of salesperson, and we know that the assistant of salesperson is going to be a contact. And in the contacts model, we have a bunch of different fields, including, of course, the one for email. So let's just select it, confirm. Perfect. And we have the new related field that we have to rename, email of assistant. That can be automatically displayed. Okay. Now let's jump into the one-to-many fields. We know that Brandon Freeman has been an assistant or a helper in this sales order. Let's have him as well in sales order number 24. Let's select that Brandon Freeman was also an assistant. As you see, we have directly here the related field, which is the email of the assistant. Let's save. Why we cannot? Because we forgot to add that specific field. Let's have it as a national sales order. Perfect. Now, if we go to the contacts model, let's open specifically Brandon Freeman, but we could open any other contact. Actually, if we go to Azure Interior, one of the things that we were mentioning before, but maybe the image was too small, is that from one contact we have many opportunities, many meetings, many purchases. Okay, let's go back to Brandon Freeman, and here we want to see with how many sales order he's been participating as an assistant. How can we do that? Let's open Studio, and we'll just put it below the tax ID. So it's going to be a one-to-many relational field. Why? Because it's one contact, many sales orders. So let's bring it here. And how can we relate it? In this case, we know that it's going to be related with the sales order model, because that's where we added him. So we could search either for the sales order model, or we can also search directly for that specific field, the assistant field. And we have here assistant of salesperson, which is contained in the sales order model. Let's open him, confirm. Perfect. And we'll call it sales orders where contact was an assistant. Maybe that's too much. Let's just put it sales order assistant participation. Alrighty. So what do we know? This is a one-to-many. What are those many? The many records that we had for the sales order model. So what are we seeing here? The sales order model. What can we do? We could also just not to display everything. So for example, let's not display the salesperson, the activities, the company, and we just want to display the customer, the number of the sales order where he was a participant, and the total, and we'll have here the sum. Okay, so that's a one-to-many field. Okay, so till here we talked about some basic fields and some relational fields. What about the reports? Let's go into the reports. Let's go to the sales again, open our sales order number 7. And if we hit Studio, we mentioned that here in this menu, we had the views and we had also the reports. Could I create a totally new report apart from the ones the existing reports, the quotation order and the performa report that we have? The answer is yes. Within Studio, when we hit reports, we can directly here create here, and our report, the new one, could have our headers and footers, minimal headers and footers, or create a totally blank report, complete blank PDF, where we would be adding all our different fields, okay, that we want to add in our report. In this case, what we are going to do, and my recommendation if you are using production databases or you are in test databases, my recommendation is that when you try to do new things, first, if you try to modify an existing report, if you hover over that report, you can hit the 3 buttons, the drop-down menu. Let's duplicate this new report, and in the copy, we'll do the different modifications. Once we are sure about those modifications, we can replicate them in the original report. So in this case, Let's open this quotation order copy. Can we change the name for this report? Of course. How? I just hit here, report, and instead of having as quotation order copy, not gonna be that original, but for this one, we're gonna call it quotation order Xavier test. Okay. Okay, here, what do we have for these reports? If we want to be able to print it as well, this will be by default checked, which is gonna be the add in the print menu. Okay, what does that mean? That if we close Studio and we go to our print button, we're gonna have the quotation order and the quotation order Xavier test. You might be wondering, how come we had also the proforma report? How come it's not here? It's because the proforma report is an additional configuration that we'll have to apply in the sales settings. Let's continue with the new report that we duplicated. So we know that in the sales order, we specified the national versus international, right? What if we want to specify that also in our report in the PDF? Can we do that? Yes. It reconnected. Okay. Alrighty, let's continue, guys. So, sorry about that. It seemed to be a technical problem with the streaming. So, okay, seems that everything is fine. Sorry about that, guys. We'll just continue. So, how can we add those blocks? Sorry about that, guys. Let's add a text block. You see that we have it as the dashed line. In this case, we could add anything. For example, if we select that text block, let's select it, and we'll name it as international versus national sales order. Semicolon. We hit anywhere, and you see how it updates. So we just added that specific information. What could we add as well? Another text block or even some title blocks. For example, just below or above our order sales order. And on the new title, we could add, this is your sales order. As you can see, just easy customizations that we can add. Okay. Now, for that specific one, let's add now a field. Instead of adding it as a new line, we can add it just after the two dots. How? With inline. See the dashed lines? Let's add it just here. And that field, what we're going to be doing, we're going to be relating it with what? With our field that we added in the sales order model. So this is going to be national versus international. And what are we going to retrieve? The value that we added in that specific sales order, national. And you may be wondering, oh, but can I change the colors, the width? Can I make this bold? Yeah, that's very easy. When we just click the new field or even the text, we can change the colors, have it in red, in italic. We can even change the font style. We could also have it just visible, as well as we did with Studio. We could have these fields only visible, or these customizations only visible for sales order managers, for sales administrators, sorry about that. We could for sure have those fields only visible for certain groups. Okay. All right. So now we've seen just a very small modification of our report, but overall the rest of the modifications would be going in the same sense. We'd be adding those texts, those fields. An additional one that I wanted to mention is What about the field and label? For the field and label, we are not only bringing or adding the value of our field, but also the label of the field. So if we do the same, we add the one for international versus national. What we're going to be seeing is both how we named our field and the value of the field. Why is it that with the field and label we had multiple dashed lines? It's because we can be adding those field and labels in different columns of our PDF. The PDF, it's divided in different columns, and in this case, for the fields and label, we can have up to 4 columns. In more advanced trainings, if we have those trainings, we could even have 12 columns. We can modify that, but that's a bit more advanced. So that will be it for the overall presentation. Just to mention again, what did we see? We saw some modifications that we can add in the form views, also in our list views. How do we add those modifications? With additional fields or additional customizations that we add with Studio. Those fields are going to be added to the model. And then, since the model has different views, we can divide or spread those fields among the different views. So we saw basic fields that we can add, decimals, selection, checkboxes. We also saw the relational fields, many to one, one to many, many to many, related fields as well, like we saw with the email. And now I would like to first, of course, thank you all for being here today, and I would like to go over some questions in case that you have some questions. I'll leave you also with our social media. Please keep in touch with us. So, some questions that we have here. If I use Form Builder for name and email, can I create a lead in CRM? After that, I want to send email to the lead with a new form with 10 questions. Once that form is filled, I want to create the lead to sales chance. From what I'm believing here, you would like to create a report and create a lead in CRM. From your idea, what I would actually suggest you is that we use the Service app and send a survey. However, if you don't want to use Service app and you want to create a new report or a new PDF that contains different questions and the client might answer those questions directly in paper format, something like that, yes, we could create that report. However, I insist I would use Service for these regards. Not sure if we have additional questions, guys. Seems that we don't have those many additional questions. Well, in that case, thank you all for attending this webinar. I hope that it was useful, that you could learn the Studio basics. And as we mentioned, Studio is a tool that, as you saw, it allows us to do many customizations, things that are not out of the box, so that we can add with different customizations. You see that it's very user-friendly, it's very flexible, and well, just thank you guys. I believe that we have one more question. Thank you for the, how can you make the commission as a percentage of all sales order total? In this case, what we did is that we added a decimal field. We selected the total and we made it equal to the total multiplied by a percentage. In this case, what you are mentioning is a calculated field. It is possible, but we would not be specifically using Odoo Studio. We could use Odoo Studio directly, but my recommendation is that for that you would use a Python formula, and that would be considered development. I hope that that answers your question. Another one. Can we create an app that is exposed to outside visitors? We can create apps within our database, but those apps are going to be for our internal users. So the answer would be no. We have another question from David Goldfeather. Thank you for your question, David. And he's mentioning, is it possible to create a web form to create a new customer and also a sales order at the same time? So you're mentioning, is it possible to create a web form, create a new customer and also a sales order all at the same time? I'm not fully following you with this question. What I understood from here is, can we create a new customer maybe with a many-to-one field? The answer is yes. Could we create a sales order from another model, for example, from the context model? If we have, for example, that one-to-many field that we added, we could add more sales order directly from there. I'm not sure that this is answering your question, but it was just some additional insights that I could give you. All right, guys, I see that we don't have any additional questions. Well, it was a pleasure for me to present this webinar for you. Of course, if you have additional questions, please don't hesitate to text us or email us at afi@odoo.com. And well, have a good rest of your day. Bye.